Yeah, so this is Mark Henry. He's the real strongest man in the world. He even says so back. World's strongest man, right? Yeah, so this is Mark Henry. You know, the Hall of Pain. Now, why do I call Mark Henry the real strongest man in the world? Well, it actually has to do with the fact that not so much with the weights that he's lifted, which are quite impressive in and of themselves, but it has more to do with the manner in which he lifted them. He, well, first of all, when you consider his power lifts, the deadlift and the squat, which I believe he did about 420 kilos. I'm not sure about the number. I'm not sure if that's the exact number. I think he did that on both the deadlift and the squat, respectively. But I might have to check again to make sure if those numbers are correct. But I think I heard somewhere, I read somewhere, it was around 420 kilograms each. Now, there have been individuals that have lifted more than him. I mean, the deadlift, for example, Ed Hall has lifted 500 kilos. The squat, there have been guys that have lifted, 560 or 570 kilos, But you have to take into consideration the manner in which Mark Henry accomplished his lifts. Well, first of all, I can begin with the squat. I mean, he didn't, when he did the squat, he didn't do, as far as I understand from some of the video I've seen of him, and I've read some articles of him. I had this, it was one of the first times he appeared in, I think, in Muscle and Fitness back in the early 90s, like 1990 or 91. And he did this giant squat. And in the picture, the photograph, it showed where he the style of the squat that he did was more akin to that of the Olympic squat that they do in Olympic weightlifting. And so in the Olympic style weightlifting, they do a squat with the bar relatively high on the back at the neck, almost at the base of the neck, and the back is very straight. And they go way below parallel. I mean, a true deep knee bend. And so in his photograph I saw of Mark Henry, like, this was back when he was like 18, 19 years old. And it was a deep knee bend, his relatively narrow stance. And he was a huge guy. He's probably about the same size as he is now. And to do like a relatively narrow stance and to go deep, breaking parallel, way below parallel, where to the point where the photographic evidence clearly displayed without any doubt that it was a deep knee bend. So he went all the way down, his back was relatively straight, Now you contrast this with the powerlifting style of the squat, which is great too. It's awesome, but I think really it's a different lift. It's a different style of lifting. It's like comparing apples and oranges. I mean, they're two different things. I mean, the Olympic style squat is no closer relation to the powerlifting style of the squat than than it would be to the bench press. You know, they're that different. You know, and so in this photo I saw of Mark Henry, where he actually did a squat of that was all the way down, deep knee bend, and I think it was well over 400 kilos, or 409, 420 or something like that kilograms. He also did, I think, about the same in the deadlift. Now the other thing too is that he didn't use a lifting suit. He didn't wear a special squatting suit. He didn't wear a special deadlift suit. I think the only thing he wore was, I think, the lifting belt and a singlet. And I remember vaguely, I wish I still had this magazine article from years ago, and it talked about how he didn't use any wraps, not initially. And then he was about to go to a third and final attempt for a bigger lift, and that he had his knees wrapped, but he was waiting for a long time for his turn, and his legs kind of fell half asleep, so he couldn't actually lift. And so he lifted better without them, for him, And so you have to consider the fact that, when he did his lifts, they were, deep knee bend for the squat. And for both the squat and the deadlift, he did not use the special lifting suits, squat suit, deadlift suits. Just a lifting belt and the singlet. And the singlet doesn't give you any advantage at all. It's just a costume or uniform. Now, of course, he really was the strongest man in the world, officially, too. He won, I think he was the winner of the first Arnold Classic Strongman in the early 2000s. And so he legitimately is the strongest man. It's not just me saying that he was, or somebody else saying it in a subjective way. It's not anecdotal evidence that he was the strongest man. He really did win, a strongman title. It was not the original strongman title that can trace its lineage back to, I think, 1977. The one where Frank Columbo, I think, broke his leg lifting a fridge on his back. That one, that was the first strongman. But I think there have been several different versions since, but that's the main one. That's the main one that, produced the likes of Magnus Ver Magnusson, Bill Kazmaier, John Paul Sigmarsson, and the like, and trace its lineage back to that. But Mark Henry was the original. He was the first Arnold Classic strongman. I think there were only 3 lifts at the time that he won it, but it's still officially recognized and sanctioned. So he was the first winner of that. Now for the bench press, I don't think he bench pressed that much, or relatively compared to his deadlift in the squat, where he lifted some big weights. But I think he bench pressed 250 kilos or 240 kilos or something, which for a guy of his size, he weighed almost that much. I don't know. I think he weighed close to 200 kilos or 190 kilos or something like that. I don't know his exact weight. Of course, it fluctuated quite a bit from, I think he was a little bit lighter when he was an Olympian. Now, of course, concerning the bench press, he never wore a bench shirt neither. So he never had that advantage. He never wore the bench press shirt. He never did the fancy technique of, the arching of the back and all of that stuff. There was no funny business with him. It was just straight bench press, straight, you know, brute force. And so it was for real, you know. Now, as for, you know, restoratives meaning steroids or growth hormone, I think he's been one of the individuals that, you know, talked openly about how, you know, he didn't use them, and how, you know, there, I guess there should be more testing conducted. And when he was an Olympian, he was tested quite a bit, like often, right? And he passed all those tests. Now, I don't know, has he ever used these drugs? I mean, I don't know. I'm saying that he didn't. He was one of the few individuals that didn't use them, and that he remained clean, you know, throughout his lifting career as a strongman, powerlifter, and Olympic weightlifter. Now, either he was, you know, totally honest and he was really that good that he was competitive against guys that were using them, or he was just really good and very lucky at passing all those tests, which I think is the less likely scenario. I think it's more likely that he never used them, and probably I would say one of the few guys of his caliber that didn't use them. And you know, I have no objection to individuals that use growth hormone or steroids or other things. You know, it's just, it would be better if they didn't lie about it. But I guess they have to lie about it. I mean, it is technically, well, officially, they're illegal. But it's kind of like, you know, booze during Prohibition, or even cannabis now, right? Where, of course, I mean, cannabis is legal in Canada and in several of the states, like Colorado and Washington State and a few others, I think. But I mean, there's still much taboo about it. So it's one of, you know, steroids is kind of like that. It's one of those things where, you know, I mean, it's illegal, but a lot of people use them, and there would really be no, probably I would say no Mr. Olympia, and no powerlifting as most people know it without them. And so it's very unlikely that you'd have powerlifting the way it is, and even Olympic lifting, or Olympic sports for that matter in general. I mean, I think that restoratives are used all the time, but I think I would surmise that a lot of people get away with it. And I mean, if records can be broken every year, every few years, you know, at every Olympics, there's at least some records that get broken. So I mean, you can't keep getting better and better just naturally. I don't think. I mean, there might be a few individuals that can. I think Mark Henry was one of the few individuals that was exceptionally talented, and he could do, you know, get away with not using the drugs and still be competitive, and even surpass a lot of the individuals that were. So that's the thing. I mean, Mark Henry, the way that he lifted, the fact that he didn't use any gear that I know of, and that the fact that he didn't use the drugs that I'm aware of. So that makes him the world's true strongest man.